In the vast golden savanna, where the wind sings and the trees sway to the rhythm of nature, lives Leo, a lion with an imposing appearance and a heart full of pride. He was no ordinary lion, you see. He was the true king of the savanna, and he had no doubts about it. His piercing gaze and golden mane shone in the sun, making everyone around him look at him with reverence. Leo felt unique, almost like a masterpiece of nature, and the reflection of his image in the crystal-clear lake was proof of this. All the animals in the savanna knew the lion, but more than that, they admired his strength, his courage, and above all, his majestic appearance. He didn't go a day without admiring himself in any surface that reflected his image. In the morning, the reflection in the calm waters of the lake made him smile to himself. In the afternoon, on the hot rocks of the savanna, he saw himself as the greatest of warriors. Even the leaves that swayed in the wind reflected his presence so perfectly that he felt an indescribable satisfaction. Leo walked through the savanna like a king, with firm steps and his head held high, confident that he was the center of attention. He believed that nothing and no one could threaten his supremacy. His roars echoed throughout the region, and all the other animals stopped to listen, as if it were a declaration of strength. He felt invincible, and this sensation accompanied him all the time. He had a clear and simple view of his existence. He was the best, the strongest, the most beautiful. There was no room for doubt in his mind. And to him, nothing else mattered. When Leo looked at himself in the lake, a deep joy blossomed in his heart. He smiled at himself, convinced of his grandeur. I am the king, he thought, and everyone around me knows it. He believed that his appearance was the greatest reflection of his strength. His muscles, his golden mane, his piercing eyes, all of this made him feel superior. To him, the world revolved around him, and he, Leo, was the epicenter of it all. It was funny because the other animals of the savanna had their own talents and qualities, but none seemed to shine as brightly as Leo. He was the focus of attention, the true protagonist. The birds sang of his beauty, the antelope spoke of his strength, and even the elephants, known for their imposing stature, respected the lion. To Leo, this was all he needed. He knew that his reflection in the lake showed the truth about himself. He was the strongest, the wisest, the most imposing. He was the king of the savanna, and this filled him with a unique satisfaction. As the day passed and Leo admired himself again in nature's mirror, his pride only grew. He was convinced that his image was his greatest strength. He had such high self-esteem that he thought no one could challenge or question him. I am unique, he told himself. And, in a way, he was right. However, his pride, which made him feel so unbeatable, also began to build an invisible barrier around him, separating him from something he didn't yet know, the true wisdom that comes from accepting who we are, with all our imperfections. But Leo didn't know that yet. He only felt the greatness of his image and the power of his roar. Nothing else mattered. He was the lion of the savanna, and everyone knew it. And so, Leo continued his journey, immersed in his pride and confidence, unaware that something was about to change. He believed that his beauty and strength were all he needed, but what he didn't know was that the reflection of his image was about to be challenged in a way he could never predict. Leo was at the height of his confidence. Every day when he woke up, he walked through the savanna with his chest puffed out and his head held high. His reflection in the lake seemed like a symbol of power. Every ripple in the water reflected his golden mane like a mantle of majesty, and he saw himself as the absolute sovereign of those lands. The other animals, large and small, watched him with respect, and that respect only fueled his pride. For Leo, nothing was more important than this reflected image, and he nurtured that pride with every step he took. He believed that his body, strong and imposing, was the greatest example of power that nature could create. When passing by other animals, Leo felt the admiring gaze on his back, and this made him walk even taller. He didn't need to say a word to be respected. His mere glance and majestic posture spoke for themselves. He was the leader of the savanna, the undisputed king, and this position brought him immense pleasure. When he encountered other animals, whether an antelope, a zebra, or even an elephant, he felt a nearly secret pleasure upon realizing that no one dared challenge him. His pride was in his body, in the power of his jaws, in the muscles that stood out beneath his skin, in the roar that seemed to reverberate throughout the savanna. His greatest pleasure, however, was in the moments when he saw himself in any reflection. There was nothing more satisfying for Leo than admiring the image that nature created of him. The reflection in the water was the most perfect. Every detail of his golden mane, every line of his strong and imposing body, every inch of his presence exuded power. He was the personification of strength and beauty. With each new reflection, he became more and more convinced of his greatness, of his superiority overall. Nothing made him question this belief. To Leo, there was no need for anything else. He was enough. His pride was his armor, and he believed that this armor made him invulnerable. The lion had no doubts about his supremacy. He saw himself as a symbol of strength and beauty, as an incomparable being. He was proud of his appearance, his posture, his hunting ability, and his strength. But, unknowingly, his pride was starting to become an obstacle. He believed that everything he was in his image, in the way others saw him, and if that was true, nothing could bring him down. He didn't care to notice if others, more humble or wiser, had something to teach. Leo believed that his beauty and strength were enough to guarantee his position in the savannah, and he was unbeatable. As time passed, Leo became more and more immersed in this pride. He believed that his image was synonymous with invincibility, that nothing could touch him. Wisdom, the lessons of life, all of this seemed secondary in the face of the grandeur he saw reflected in the waters of the lake. For Leo, pride wasn't just a feeling of power, but a true internal certainty that he was superior to everyone. The problem, however, was that he still didn't know that true strength didn't come solely from appearance or beauty, but from something much deeper and more powerful. Leo took pleasure in knowing that he was above everyone, with no one daring to question his status. He believed that nothing could challenge him and that his pride was the key to maintaining his position. Nothing in his life, up until that moment, had happened that could show him that his self-image was about to be put to the test. The lion knew that everyone saw his greatness, but what he didn't know was that, very soon, he would face a reality that could change everything he believed to be true. It was a day like any other, with the sun shining brightly and the savannah full of sounds and movement. Leo, with his firm stride and golden mane blowing in the wind, was engaged in yet another battle for leadership. He had been challenged by other animals before, but nothing had ever been able to take him from his prominent position. He believed that his strength, his appearance, and his pride made him invincible. He felt unbeatable, and this time, it would be no different. However, what Leo didn't know was that life, with its surprises, was preparing a lesson he would never forget. The battle Leo faced was against a rival lion, younger and more agile, but with surprising strength. He had never underestimated another lion before, but something inside Leo made him believe that this would be just another easy challenge. The roar that echoed across the battlefield was deafening, and Leo advanced with all his might, ready to show his strength. But something different happened. The young, fast lion managed to strike Leo by surprise, leaving him wounded. The blow was deep. Leo felt the pain course through his body, but it wasn't just the physical pain that impacted him. He felt a wave of humiliation, something he had never experienced before. For the first time, the great and imposing lion had to retreat, injured and vulnerable. The battlefield, which had once been his territory, now viewed him differently. He was no longer invincible. He was hurt, weakened, and the reality of his own fragility became clear. With his heart racing and his breath heavy, Leo pulled away from the fight. He didn't know what to do. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional pain of being challenged, of having fallen in front of something he believed couldn't exist. He looked at his body and saw the scar he now carried. Not just a mark of battle, but a mark of his vulnerability. He could no longer ignore it. His reflection, once so strong and imposing, now seemed distorted, as if life's wisdom had finally reached him in a harsh and painful way. It was then that Leo approached a small lake, as he did every day, expecting to see his golden mane and majestic posture reflected in the water. But when he looked at the surface of the lake, what he saw wasn't the unbeatable lion he loved to admire. Instead, he saw a figure marked by the fight, with a scar crossing his body, a reminder of his fragility. The reflection was different, more human, more real. What Leo felt was a mix of shock and reflection. He had seen himself as so imposing, so untouchable, and now he realized that, contrary to what he had always believed, he was not immune to the difficulties of life. The impact of the scar was more than physical. The visible wound on his body was a constant reminder of his vulnerability, and every time Leo looked at his reflection, he felt the need to rethink everything he believed. He had always thought that his strength and pride would define him forever, but now it was clear that true strength didn't just come from his appearance. He was forced to look at reality in a way he had never done before. The battle he thought would be simple had given him more than a physical wound. It had given him a lesson he couldn't ignore. His image and pride were being challenged by life itself, and he needed to learn how to deal with it. Leo knew that from that moment on, nothing would be the same. The scar on his body represented more than a temporary loss. It was a milestone, a profound change in the way he saw himself and the world around him. He had much to learn, and this new chapter of his journey began right there, with a distorted reflection and a lesson hard to swallow. After the battle, Leo felt lost, as if he had been ripped from his comfort zone. He had always known that life brought challenges, but he had never imagined that a simple blow from an adversary could tear down all the confidence he had in himself. With the scar, the pain was not just physical. It cut deep into his soul, stirring everything he believed. Leo moved away from the center of the savannah, seeking a quiet place where he could be alone with his thoughts. Days passed, and he couldn't stop observing himself in the reflections nature offered him. With every glance, he saw the scar. A mark that reminded him of his fragility and the harsh reality that no one is immune to the adversities of life. But, unlike before, the lion no longer took pleasure in admiring himself. The confidence that once reflected in the waters now seemed like an empty mask. Something inside him was changing. In his solitude, Leo began to reflect on everything he had lived. He remembered moments when he had underestimated others, thinking that his physical strength was the only thing that mattered. He thought about the lessons he could have learned from the older ones, from those who, although they didn't have his imposing appearance, possessed a silent wisdom. It was then that Leo realized, true strength wasn't just in the power of his muscles or in the respect his image inspired. It was in the acceptance of one's own limitations, in the humility of recognizing that no one is invincible. The pain of the scar transformed him. Instead of hiding from it, Leo began to accept it as part of his story. He understood that, like any living being, he too was subject to error, failure, and learning. Each day, the scar ceased to be a symbol of weakness and began to become an emblem of resilience. Leo started to see himself in a new way, no longer as the invincible king, but as a being who, having faced difficulties, had learned to rise again with more wisdom and humility. After the harsh battle, Leo withdrew to a quieter part of the savannah, where he could reflect on what had happened. The scar on his body, marked by the struggle, seemed not only a physical reminder of the battle, but also a symbol of something much deeper. He realized that he had been brought down not only by a younger, more agile adversary, but by something he had never anticipated, his own unfounded belief in his invincibility. Above all, Leo had believed that his strength was unshakable, that his appearance, posture, and roar were enough to secure his dominant place in the savannah. But that scar, which once seemed like a simple sign of weakness, was the key to him understanding a much more valuable lesson. As the days passed, the physical pain diminished, but the internal transformation occurring in Leo was much deeper. He began to realize that true power was not in his outward appearance or in the reverence he received from others. What truly made him strong was not his golden mane or his muscles, but the way he responded to difficulties, how he stood up to challenges, how he faced pain and learned from it. He remembered all the moments when he had looked at others, particularly the older and more experienced animals of the savannah, and underestimated them. He thought that wisdom was irrelevant in the face of his physical strength, but now, looking at the scar, he saw that there was no strength without knowledge, no greatness without humility. Leo began to understand that the pride he had in himself, in his image and strength, was not a problem in itself. The problem was in how he had fueled that pride excessively. Pride must be balanced, otherwise it can blind us, make us think that we are above everything, that we are immune to the challenges of life. Leo realized that he, like any being, was susceptible to failures and mistakes, and that his journey wasn't just in the victories, but also in the defeats that taught him something new about himself. The lesson he learned was that everyone has their vulnerabilities, and recognizing this is a sign of true strength, not weakness. As the reflection deepened, Leo began to see himself differently. He no longer saw his scar as a symbol of defeat, but as a mark of growth. Every step he took towards understanding his vulnerability made him stronger, more prepared to face the obstacles that would come his way. Leo didn't know everything, and he was starting to accept that. He knew that experience was something gained over time, and that learning from others was not a sign of weakness but of wisdom. He who had once seen himself as the greatest of all, was now learning that everyone had something to offer, that true strength comes from the ability to listen, learn, and grow from life's lessons. The lion, with his pride now more balanced, felt an internal transformation that made him see things from a new perspective. Wisdom, which he had once ignored, was now becoming his greatest ally. He no longer needed to worry about being the strongest or the most invincible. He understood that true power wasn't in being invulnerable, but in knowing that falls are part of life. He was not immune to failure, but he knew that by learning from it, he became stronger each time. In his new stance, Leo began to interact differently with the other animals. Before, he had prided himself on being feared and respected, but now the respect he received was based on his wisdom and his newfound humility. He began to understand that true leadership didn't come from imposing it, but from earning it through actions that demonstrated care and understanding. Leo learned to listen to the elders, to learn from the other animals, regardless of their appearance or strength. He realized that even the animals that seemed small or fragile possessed a wealth of experience that he had never valued before. In every conversation with other animals, he absorbed lessons that could not be found in books or battles. True wisdom lay in the experiences and stories that each one carried. Leo also began to help others who, like him, had faced falls and challenges. Instead of distancing himself from those in difficulty, he now approached them, offering support, guidance, and most importantly, the lesson he had learned himself. True strength is in the ability to rise again, to learn from mistakes, and to strengthen oneself with each scar. Leo now had become an example not just of physical strength, but of character, humility, and wisdom. By the end of his journey, Leo was no longer the lion everyone feared, but the lion everyone respected. He became a legend not for his victories, but for the wisdom he had acquired along his journey. The scar, once a symbol of pain, was now the mark of his transformation. The lesson that, to be truly great, one must learn how to rise again. True greatness is not in avoiding falls, but in how we deal with them, how we grow with each challenge. Leo learned that, in the end, the greatest strength of all comes from accepting one's own humanity, with all its flaws and fragilities. And it was this way that Leo found true greatness, in his journey of humility and learning. So, everyone, what did you think of the story of the lion and the mirror? See how he learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength comes from within, and that we must be able to look at ourselves with honesty, accepting both our victories and our falls. Now, it's time to stay alert. Remember, life can teach us great lessons, just like it did with the lion. Sometimes we feel invincible, but it's always good to know that, by accepting our mistakes and learning from them, we can grow even more. So the next time you look in the mirror, remember that what matters is who you are inside, not just what appears on the outside. Stay tuned, because if you learn the lion's lesson and apply it in your daily life, you'll see how true strength comes from knowing yourself and constantly improving. Make sure to put this into practice, okay? And if you liked this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more amazing stories like this one, and comment on what you learned from the story of the lion. See you next time.